welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with David Window. David, great first segment. We talked about the BIA and some of the questions we should ask and not ask. And you mentioned a couple of times supply chain management. So can you explain that a little bit more, how the BIA should help the supply chain management frameworks?
Sure. What you find in the BIA is people say, and which suppliers do you rely on? And this triggers me, so I'll say it anyway. They often say, and what third parties do you rely on? So, which is completely, it's a good question, but you have to really understand what a true third party is in the legal sense, why it matters. So, in theory, you should be looking for your priority suppliers. Which suppliers are a priority? Now, once they're established, the link then becomes the link between those doing the BIA. Let's say we're doing it according to good practice, and we genuinely do a consolidated BIA with a consolidated position. Then the business continuity manager should then be in conversation with the head of procurement, which is a role I've actually delivered previously, and should be saying the business. It's a bit like IT. If we tell IT this is what we need, if we say through the BIA to procurement, this is what we need, this is when we need it, then that should filter into bids, tenders, quotes, and we should be assessing the supplier's ability to meet our needs. But unfortunately, I am allowed to disagree with the good practice guideline, but the good practice guideline says that what you should do is you should analyze the whole of the supplier's business continuity management system. And most procurement people can barely get their head around, why don't we just ask for a plan? That nobody's got the bandwidth. Typically, business continuity teams are one or two people. They can't look at every bid. Neither can procurement, because the people that don't come on the training courses are procurement. They don't even bother coming on the training courses, sadly. So it should filter through from the BIA, and then it should fit into the tender procedure. Now, I've got strong opinions about asking for plans, because on several occasions I've been asked to write plans specifically for bids to convince somebody that you really do business continuity, even though you don't do business continuity. It's a very, very poor strategy for assessing. But when you get into the offers, and I would like the good practice guideline to enhance this. The good practice guideline says that you operate through a service level agreement. True. But what it doesn't say is you should have incident specific service level agreements. And if you look at ISO 22318, which I did actually help write the first version of that, it talks about setting the expectations within the tender. So people say, if I'm dealing with a big company, I won't mention a big company because they say they won't show us a plan. And I say, I don't want to see the plan. Don't show me the plan. Don't care. They made it up yesterday. It's generic. It doesn't mean anything. It's telling you nothing. Build into the performance specification how you expect them to perform in an incident. Then it becomes contractual. Put the RTOs, the MBCOs, put your expectations in as incident-specific expectations, and then you can measure them against their capability and capacity. And that means you're measuring their solution against your solution. Now, the reason that doesn't often happen is lots of people don't have their own solution, and they prefer to say to the supplier, what's your solution? So the BIA output should tell you it should inform your solutions in professional practice 4. The consolidated BIA gives you the consolidated positions, therefore you can do solutions in a consolidated manner, which gives you leverage, and that should be built into your retendering and program through procurement. I'm assuming you've got procurement. I mean, we had quite a big procurement department. Not everybody's got a procurement department. Some people have just got people who buy things. But if we deal with the big guys first, and then hopefully it'll trickle down. But it's telling the organization what you depend on and why it's important. And the problem is people they do the same thing. I rely on all of these suppliers. I want them all to withstand the incident. I want them all back at the same time. And we need to get a grip on reality, I think, really. That's the problem.
How do you bring procurement and the BIA or business continuity team together? Because you've got, in many cases, procurement will be responding to the BIA as
The way
well.
we used to do it years ago is we used to have a phrase. The phrase doesn't work for everything, but we used to call them commodity groups. So we would have my experience is you have something called a category manager. I've been a category manager in procurement. You're actually managing a category of spend, and you're a market specialist in that market. And what you do is you get the people who filled in the BIA and the people who have written the specification for the tender in the same room as business continuity professionals, in the same room as your category manager. And I would even, if it's a separate function, I would even invite a risk manager in there. And those four can establish what's required. And the first question is, you've said this is a priority supplier. Nothing in life is free. So if you want that supplier to respond within 4 hours and back to 80%, we need to build that into the specification, but be prepared for them to add cost to it. You're going to have to pay for it. You can't have resilience for free. So my old boss used to say, if you ask for the world, you'll get charged for the world. So be careful what you ask for. And lots of people go into a tender saying, I need you to be 100% resilient regardless of the incident. Well, that's just crazy because they're just going to add cost to it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a plan. I want to do a due diligence visit, and I want to say, what's your solution to get to my request and my requirement? And sometimes I might actually want to physically see it. I want to see the backup generators. I want to see you've got a contract with agency staff. But if it's in the key thing is, if it's in the performance specification, it's contractual. If it's just show me a plan, it's a gateway to get a copy of the contract. So stop asking for plans is my recommendation and start asking for solutions. And they can't really say, I'm not telling you. If you make it mandatory, you can't bid unless you can prove to me that you're resilient. You've got to
Well,
know
that's
what
the
you
other
want there.
part. A lot of these vendors or partners that are out there don't want to share any of that information because it's quote unquote private or confidential.
Commercial and confidence is the way we used to get told, and that's why you get a summary of a plan rather than the real plan. But of course, that works if you haven't got a plan as well. Just send the generic plan out that we do for all bids, and then we're fine.
Yeah.
And the more you send a message out in a tender, this is just a tick box. Don't worry about it. They just tick the box. So I had a client bidding for something, and the people issuing the tender wanted to know everything about your business continuity, everything. A huge ask, but then quite often in a tender will be weighted. So they'll say 80% of the tender is based on price, 20% is based on X, Y, Z. But then this particular thing said, I want you to show me everything you've ever done on business continuity ever, but don't worry, it's only worth 0.01% of the bid. So you're sending out a mixed message there. You're saying, I need to see everything. Don't worry about it because it doesn't really mean anything. So it's poor signaling within the tender to do that. If you said 10% of the score for this bid will be based on resilience, then they'll take it seriously. But if you don't do that sort of weighting, and if I switch into the head of the procurement manager, you're constraining my commercialism there because I'll get less people who can deliver. So I'd rather have as many people offer me as possible, even if they can't really fully deliver. Because procurement people are measured on value for money. And
Right.
what we miss is we never sell business continuity as a return on investment and value for money. We struggle to establish the value of business continuity. And that takes me full circle back into the BIA. If you can quantify the BIA, you've got more chance of establishing what the return on investment is through the solution.
Any suggestions on exactly how to do that as a quick win for anyone who's listening?
When I talk about professional practice 4, I do a sort of a double graph that says, here's the cost of achieving that short RTO, and here's the impact. And the impact has gone down, but the cost of investment has gone up. And that's the true cost benefit analysis that good practice guidelines suggest we should do. But if you don't quantify the BIA, it's impossible. So the rot starts really early. You don't quantify the BIA, you don't consolidate the BIAs, therefore you can't have that healthy debate with top management. You can't say you would do it naturally with car insurance. You wouldn't pay 3 times the value of the car
Mm.
to insure it. You would say, no, that's crazy. So why do we do that in business? We establish really short timescales, and it's too difficult a debate to say, I need $500,000 to actually put this into place. So let's just miss professional practice 4 altogether and go straight to plan, copy and paste the RTOs into the plan. And then sometimes I say to people, in an exercise, do you work towards avoiding the tolerances in the RTOs? No, not really. And in a real incident, in your post-incident review, do you check, did I go beyond my RTO? Did I achieve my MBCO? How close to MTP did I get? They said, no, we all sort of pat ourselves on the shoulder and say, we did well there, didn't we? So if you set objectives, why don't you measure them at the post-incident? What's the point? And I suppose I'm almost saying, if we don't do any of this the way the book says we do it, then the whole thing becomes pointless and a tick box.
Yeah. I only did one exercise I can remember where IT actually measured themselves, saying that XYZ app had to be up in 2 hours. And as they went through the exercise, when they started, they timed themselves for every single one. And so they could find out where their strengths and weaknesses were. And they were the only ones who did that. Otherwise, it was, stay away. The BIA says this, we've got 24 hours. So, we don't even want to see
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
until hour 23 and a half when they start
Yeah.
showing up. And that's it.
Yeah. And that's the issue with, I often, I will say argue, because I do argue. I often argue even with my fellow tutors, and I say, we need the MTPD in the plan. And they say, no, never put the MTPD in the plan because it's perceived as a secondary RTO. And then people ignore the RTO and they work on the MTPD. And I say that's because we don't explain that it's a cliff edge tolerance that we don't want to go to. But I think the good practice guideline says you should establish your thresholds for escalation. My view is a threshold for escalation is I've gone beyond RTO or I'm going to go beyond RTO and I'm heading towards the tolerance. I need to escalate and ask for support. So I believe MTPD should be in the plan because that is actually your top management's tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to know what will they tolerate so that I know when to escalate to a tactical response and possibly even to a strategic response.
Now let's change gears a little bit because you've mentioned AI once or twice as well. So how does AI come into supply chain or the BIA? How can AI help us?
Okay, well, I suppose I need to put a disclaimer in first. I'm in my late 60s, so I was going to do something called analog man meets AI going forward in the future. I may do that in Malaysia. Um, I'm in Malaysia in July at the conference, but it's more of a how I think it should do it rather than its capability. And I sat in an interesting forum in Manchester in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guy there that said artificial intelligence currently is not intelligent. It's and I'll use the phrase that they were using. It's excellent at bringing together lots and lots of information and analyzing it very, very quickly. But it's not actually intelligently using that information. And that's the next step. So my wish, my hope, my ambition is that finally AI will enable the BIA to be quantifiable properly because the AI will do the hard work that nobody feels that they can do. And you'll see quantifiable impact over time, not singularities. And then you'll be able to ask the question, what's unacceptable and what's acceptable? And I'm already seeing this in risk. It's as always, it seems that risk professionals are just slightly ahead of us. And I'm already seeing people say, do we just do red, amber, green, or do we quantify the risk? And AI will help you quantify the risk. If it will quantify a risk impact, then it's the same. The difference is We're looking at the impact over a timeline of an incident, not impact and likelihood. And then I think AI will eventually be able to bring all that data. They were talking about data mining in this forum, data lakes, and its ability to absorb so much information and bring it into a format that you can understand. So I think it will make PP3 BIA more tangible. PP4 then can work better. And I suppose I say this a lot in the class, so I'll say it again now. I think AI could be the way plans are delivered in future. So if you remember the film Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the original one,
Mhm.
as he's running away from the bad guys, he opens a suitcase and he's facing himself, and it says, "I guess you've got a problem. Here are your first actions. Do this now." And I think plans will stop being on paper. There'll just be a chatbot, and that chatbot will have all that information from all the AI that says, "You planned to do this. You planned to do this, and these are the assets you have available, and this is how you will attain them. Now make a choice. Tell me what you did. Come back to me. I'll give you the next set of actions." So I think in the future, plans could be my emoji as a chatbot guiding you through a plan. I don't think there'll be any paper. You'll just be asking questions, and that I think that makes plans potentially more realistic. There's a big push on the internet about let's get rid of plans as well as let's get rid of BIAs because they're too prescriptive and nobody ever follows them. GPG, a plan's not meant to be prescriptive. It actually says in the ISO, it's guidance. Here's what you thought you would do. Here's what you think you should do. Here are your parameters. Now make a decision. If you don't have any of those parameters, you're literally doing a low-level crisis management. Okay, we don't know what to do, guys. Let's work it out. That's not business continuity. That's crisis management.
Yeah. Yeah, myself, I'm not a big fan of all these big binders and plans that get
No,
documented in the end, because when something does happen, that's not where people are running to.
no,
They're, excuse me, they're doing exactly what you said AI is doing. Here's the parameters, here's what we've got. What do
yeah,
we do based on what we know? And that's when people, disseminate and go off and do what they need to do. No one pulls out a plan, whether it
no,
be in a binder,
no.
online, or whatever. No one's pulling out those plans. So
And
then,
again, that
so,
completely devalues us.
yeah,
People say, well, we didn't use the plan anyway. What was the point? But
yeah,
if AI was to say, these are your signed off predetermined parameters, and this is the potential solution, now work through it, then it's actually doing what people do instinctively,
yeah,
which is really what the plan should be.
yeah. So we're coming to the end of the show, David. We've talked about BIA design, AI, supply chain. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I'm really, am I despondent? No, I'm not despondent. I'm ever hopeful. But we were saying on our previous one-to-ones, I seem to have been banging this drum for 13 years. And is it getting better? That's my concern. So I'm hoping AI is going to be the trigger. We saw resilience come up as a trend. You and I have talked about this.
Mhm.
I think it's worth repeating what somebody said to me in a forum a few weeks ago. I always ask the question to people who are specialists: tell me what resilience is. I'm not going to ask you. We talked about this. Tell me what resilience is, but you're not allowed to use adapt and bounce back because they just throw out the same old diatribe. But this guy said, good risk management and good business continuity together will give you resilience. It's just that resilience is a great sales pitch. If you say to top management, I'm going to make your organization more resilient, then they can attach themselves to that.
Mhm.
If you say, I'm going to give you good business continuity, they'll say, just tell me what I need to be compliant. So I think we need to get on the wave of resilience, and resilience is what we used to do, but in a slightly different flavour. Um, so I used to be very skeptical about resilience, but I now see it as a good sales pitch for pushing what we believe in, rather than compartmentalising risk and BC, and then there's a tension and a fight between the two disciplines. So if nothing else, resilience is going to bring the whole thing together as one discipline, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. David, thank you so much for sharing your time. I really appreciate it. Great chatting with you.
Enjoyed it. Enjoyed it. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sure there's going to be a second time, and hopefully
Okay.
we'll see you in London later this year too.
Yes, you will. You will.
Good, because
On
I'll be there as
continuity.
well.
Yeah, I'll see you on the continuity shop stand.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.